How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Practical Network Fundamentals. In this video, we're going to do a small project where we set up a PiHole on the network that is actually going to block all ads. I want to do this small project because it brings together a lot of the concepts we've already discussed, and it really does a good job showing the power of understanding DNS. So before we get into the setup and configuration of the PiHole and testing it, I want to show you my network topology because I know we've changed up network topologies a few times since we started this course. And so this is my home network right now. And for this particular project, I have my desktop PC, which is what I'm running Streamlabs OBS on, which is what captures the video and audio. I also have been running that Windows 11 VM that you've been seeing on this machine. So that's been running in VMware Workstation Player. This does connect wirelessly. I can run a long cable into my living room to connect it physically sometimes, but that's not always necessary. It would be if I was doing a live stream, but to record videos, it's just fine. So I connect wirelessly, and I am able to log into VMware, which is VMware ESXI. It's a virtualization server that hosts multiple VMs. And by the way, VMware ESXI, again, is essentially an operating system designed as the hypervisor, right? And on top of it are just a bunch of VMs you set up. So I've got that VMware ESXi running on a server. So I'll access that in the browser and I'll show you that. And that's really where I'll set up a lot of my server VMs. I could do more VMs right here on my desktop, but I've already got my hypervisor set up. I've had it set up for a while now, so I'll just set up VMs on there. And we'll do a whole other course on virtualization. But for now, I just want you to be familiar with kind of how things are set up. All right, so let's take a look at it. So here we are on my hypervisor, right? I'll show you essentially how I connect to it is I just type in its IP address here up in the URL, and I log in, and I set up VMs. And in this case, we have an Ubuntu VM, which I'm not going to do a whole walkthrough of setting up Ubuntu right now as a VM. I'll just show you with Ubuntu set up already how we can set up this PiHole. Now you see here, I'm going to maximize this screen. You see here that I've got the Raspberry Pi website open. The reason I say that is because a lot of people do this project from a Raspberry Pi. If you don't know what a Raspberry Pi is, it's a system on a chip, which is a computer, very small computer. I would say credit card size, but now the Pico that's come out is like even smaller. It's fully capable computer, has memory, a CPU, has a GPU, lots more RAM than you would think. Like it's just these are amazing devices, and they're pretty cheap. You can get them like between $100 and $200. So it's cool. There's a lot of people doing awesome stuff with Raspberry Pis. If you ever want a project, other than the ones I'm showing in this course, just Google or look on YouTube Raspberry Pi projects, and there's just people doing amazing stuff in IT, security, robotics, drones, like all types of stuff. So yeah, let's look at PiHole. So anytime I'm learning about new software, it usually comes via, word of mouth, whether it's on YouTube or someone I know or Twitter, and, they share a link or something. Anytime I learn about a new project and I want to do it, I just go to the website, right? And I know this sounds kind of basic, but I think sometimes we overthink these things. And, you go to the website and you look up the install procedures. And with the PiHole, they give you pretty straightforward explanation. So here you see, install a supported operating system is the first step, right? So I've already done that with, Ubuntu. I just set it up as a VM. If I had a Raspberry Pi, I would install it in Raspbian, which is the OS, the Linux distribution running on most Raspberry Pis, although you can run other things. You could run it as a Docker container, which I will say containers are outside of the scope of this course, but you should learn them. Step 2 is going to be install a PiHole. Right now we're at step 2. If you want me to do like how to set up a VM like as a video, let me know and I can do that. That might make sense as a video, but let me know in the comments. So we're going to do install PiHole. So we know we're on step 2. So follow directions when you install things. Before we do that, I do want to show you GitHub a little bit. GitHub's awesome. Microsoft recently bought them. It's they host open source projects and code repositories, which are essentially directories of programs that you can clone to your own system and customize and run. And I pulled this up because it shows some of the benefits of the PiHole, right? So they call it a network-wide ad blocker. You can run. It's considered a DNS sinkhole. Here are some of the benefits. You can also block specific websites, so you're not just limited to blocking ad domains. And it shows us how we can install it. So let's click here and I'll show you. It just takes you to GitHub, which GitHub, a lot of projects are on GitHub. A lot of tools are up here, very useful. So what we'll do is we'll just do the one automated install, and this is going to be a little bit of Linux here. So I'll keep the browser open and run like terminal, which is the terminal emulator to interact with the command line interface of Linux. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste this. Curl, is pulling down the files needed, right? So I'm going to hit enter, and it's asking me to run it as sudo. Sudo is super user do, which is essentially like administrator in Windows, but in Linux, this is what attackers are trying to do. If they're on like Hack the Box or on attacking vulnerable machines, they're trying to get root, right? So this is how you do that. I just copied and pasted that command in. The installer, here's the UI for that. We're going to go through this. Open source software, here it is. I will say if you have the means and you like a project, open source project, and realize that there's volunteers behind a lot of these open source projects that are putting in a lot of time with the intentions to making the project itself free. So if you ever like a project and there's a donation page for it, throw them a couple bucks, because a lot of the people and the developers behind these projects, they're putting in a lot of time voluntarily to give away software for free. And you would be surprised how much of business enterprise IT runs on open source. And it's like interesting to see some of these developers aren't doing as well financially as they should be. So we'll hit enter. Static IP needed, right? It says the PiHole is a server, so it needs a static IP address to function properly. If you have not already done so, you must ensure that this device has a static. Depending on your OS, there are many ways to achieve this, through DHCP reservation or by manually assigning one. Remember what I mentioned about DHCP in a last video is that you can give certain systems an IP by MAC address, and DHCP will give it that same computer that same IP. So that can work too. You can also go into like the network adapter settings in a similar fashion you would in Windows and statically assign it. In this case, let's move forward. I want to show you how to set it up. I don't plan on keeping this, permanently on my network just by, choice. I just like playing with different setups. So we'll hit enter, and it's asking us which upstream DNS provider. Think upstream, that is what's next, right? So, your 8.8.8.8 and your other types of DNS. So let's do this. PiHole relies on third-party lists in order to block ads. You can use the suggestions below, right? So you'll notice on GitHub, you can even Google it, like blacklists and ad block lists and all types of things. It's just a series of domain names on the internet of of domains to block. So, because no matter what device you're on, when you are watching an ad, that ad is coming from a domain, right? A specific domain, and that's all DNS. So you can use DNS also for security purposes, right? So we'll hit yes. Do we want to install the admin web interface? Yes. A web server is required for admin web interface. Do you want to install, light TPD and the required PHP modules? Yes. Would you and I? Yes, let's do all this. Let's show everything. All right, so what it's going to do now is it's going to pull down all the necessary packages for the web server too, because remember we mentioned in an earlier video how web servers aren't just for websites, like as you think of them. They're also for web applications, in which case, like configuring a, the PiHole, you'd be interacting with a web interface, which is, it's a lightweight web app. So it's configuring all that. It's going to be tied to the IP address of this machine. And what I can do is I can hit File and New Tab. So this stays running. And I can show you how you can confirm in Linux what your IP address is. And it's the same as in on a Mac. So if you know that, let me know. Or, think or say it out loud to yourself as a challenge. I'll give you some time to do that. You can pause the video. If you thought ifconfig was it, you would be wrong. It would be ipadd. So notice by default in Ubuntu, ifconfig is not a thing. You do IP space add. But if I installed NetTools, ifconfig would work. So you can use IP space add. You can use ifconfig in a lot of cases, and or you could just go to the NIC via the GUI. Okay, so we see the IPs here. This would be the IP that I'm going to in the browser to be able to start configuring it, right? So here we go. It's saying it's set up. This is where I need to go. This is the IP. Great, beautiful. The password, this is something we probably want to keep up, right? So let's do that from the same system. So we could just type in our own IP, and let's see, 88.201 admin. There we go. There's the PiHole is set up. Now, what will we do next? We will log in, right? So we know the password is, where is it? It's not letting me copy that. So I'm gonna have to manually type it. So I'll do D0. Okay. So I'll come back and forth to this. So D0, capital L, U, cool. So I'm logged in now, and you can see there's really no analytics, right? But we do have 133,943 domains in the ad list. What do you think we need to do in order to start populating data here and to be able to actually block ads? If you're thinking, oh, we need to make sure that a client or multiple clients are actually going through the PiHole as the DNS server, you would be right. So how do we do that? What I can do is I'm going to go ahead and start up my VM. So we can take a look here while this is starting up. Hit Windows 11. This is going to load up. We know this DNS server is set to something different. So I've already shown you how to change the DNS server. So in this case, let's log in. And what I can do now is I can go into, let's maximize this. I can go in here. I can set my IP for my DNS, right? My preferred DNS. So we go edit and preferred DNS. We will change that. That's 201, right? And I'm always second guessing. Even if I was right, I'm always second guessing myself regarding these IPs because it's important, right? Yep, 10.3.88.201. So we'll hit save. And let's try to go out to the internet from the VM. Sorry, I didn't mean to close that. Sometimes there's so many VMs I'm getting lost of where I'm at, right? So I'll open up this. any website's going to have tons of ads. So we can try to go, anywhere. I like going to IGN. Let's try going to YouTube. So let it load up. And let's see how it does. So what we can do is, okay, YouTube came up. It's a little bit slower, I'm noticing. Let's look at if it's generating any traffic here. Yep, we're starting to see some ads blocked here, right? We see the percentage blocked of ads. It's going to be hard to tell where ads should be on sites. Of course, in the videos, right, we could try clicking some, going through. The issue, I will say, with blocking ads is some businesses are very reliant on blocking ads, okay, in terms of finances. And that's not evil. Ads, in my opinion, are not evil. They're, how YouTubers often get paid from YouTube is through ads. So, this is not by any means, this is in your right to use. I'm just be aware that if you're just trying to block ads all the time, it's also how a lot of people make money. Notice these pie charts and these dynamic charts and graphs look awesome. The queries over time, this would look amazing to see what you can block. Look at all these permitted domains, blocked domains, right? So what, you could add to your domains too. You could add whitelists as well, which is things that are allowed. If you're a parent and you don't want your kids on certain websites while they're on your Wi-Fi, you could type in that domain, right? If it's nasty sites or just sites you don't want them on, right? You could do that here. A lot of routers enable this capability as well. But it's kind of cool to see this interface with the visualization and all that. That's all I really had for this video. I hope that you try this project out. You play with this, you get it going, maybe even try it on a Raspberry Pi, go buy one. You don't have to. You can always set it up on a VM too. You don't necessarily need the server set up like I mentioned that I have and showed you. You don't need that. You could run it on your system if that's capable, or you could even, this is beyond, but you could look at how to set up a cloud instance in AWS or what have you. But a lot of this is really just dependent on local networks. So going to the cloud is probably going to be a little bit more complicated. So try to keep it in your LAN, this whole ad blocking system. But let me know if you have any questions when you're setting this up. Let me know if you run into any issues or you have any other ideas for projects. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video and keep learning.